Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Friday, July 26th, and as usual, every Friday we get our financial whisperer, Bryce Wade, in to kind of dissect some of the news from the noise when it comes to all of the conspiracy and nonsense that is actually really happening in our planet. And just before we get Bryce on here to help y'all find a new recipe to make lemonade out of lemons, and there's lots of lemons, but there's going to be some good stuff, I'm sure, too. But if you're tuning in on Facebook, 5 nights in a row, this is a new record. I don't know what is going on. They've allowed us to stream there so benevolently. I don't know that many people are seeing and are getting notifications, but as usual, we are streaming on Rumble, X, and YouTube, the backup channel, as well as Wimkin. So make sure that you are subscribed and hit those notification bells, guys. We need everybody's help working together to get this information out there right now. If it's just up to us podcasters, nobody's getting nothing. They won't let anybody see anything. So without further ado, we've got Mr. Bryce Wade in the house again. Thanks, Bryce, for finding another hour to come and hang out with us and try and decipher, or I guess translate from some of the insanity that's going on out there. I'm not sure where exactly you want to start. I think we're going to try and get into the routine of commodities up front first. And the reason for this is, guys, it's only going to get worse before it gets better. And the only and best safe solution, if you've got enough preparation done that you're going to survive food and water wise for 90 days, precious metals is the answer. And the more I'm seeing what's going on out there, Bryce, the more it frightens me for people that have their money tied up in 401ks, RRSPs, all that kind of stuff. I think that they're going to start getting the shock of their lives if they haven't gotten it already.
Yes, and I'm going to be honest with everybody. I don't have good news today. I'll just am I share my? I am share my screen. Yeah, so you can bring up my screen here. So we had an actual decline in precious metals this week. So it dropped from a high of about 24.30. It got up to a little bit higher than that, but that was what it ended that day. And then it dropped to about 23.50. So we saw a good, about a 1 to 2% decline in gold this week, which is unusual, especially with all of the other economic data that's coming out. So I imagine that's probably somebody selling some of their contracts, because typically what they do to control the price of precious metals is they sell paper. So the actual physical asset it's a lot more involved process to move it around the planet and move it to a different. It's a big deal, right? Because with paper money, paper gold, which is GLD and SLV, you can just push a button and things move, right?
So is this partly, could this be adjusted or impacted by the de-dollarization that we're seeing around the rest of the planet? Is that kind of how this works? As people are getting rid of their paper gold, they're probably moving to something that is a little more stable or solid.
It could be, but I don't think so in this case, because some of the other research I was doing this week, and there was a lot of stuff that happened this week, and so one of them was that the Japanese yen fell considerably against the dollar, and they are the biggest holder of U.S. Treasuries outside of the U.S. Second only to China first. So China's third. Japan's second, and obviously the U.S. is first. And so one of the things that happened with them this week is that, and I'll get into that a little later, actually, because it probably had an effect on this. I'm just not sure how exactly. But the other thing that happened this week is silver dropped pretty considerably. And so we were at, where's this? This is iShares. This is the wrong one here. Silver, there we go. Silver, there we go. Here we go. So we've been sitting at a strong, like, just under 30 for the last couple months, basically, about the last month or so, and then it dropped pretty significantly to, what are we sitting at here? Just over 28, which is a little bit surprising. So generally what happens is that every time that there's a bull market, there'll be a new high and then it'll pull down a little bit. And so it's unusual that this has dropped this much. This is actually kind of a blessing in disguise. So if you've been, on the fence about getting into gold and silver, it's just on an 8% discount right now.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing here is knowing the storm that's coming. This is kind of the calm beforehand, which is you're not going to get a better opportunity moving forward. That if you're on the fence about it, now is the time to do something with it. But as far as for getting, I keep coming back to people that are invested in the government issued programs, the RRSPs and the 401ks. This is why I get you on here, because I myself would be freaked out if I was seeing what I'm seeing without having someone to kind of interpret it. There's going to be an awful lot of people that are going to be really struck with the collapse that is becoming more and more imminent.
Yeah, and there's a couple big indicators which I'll actually bring up now. That's kind of a good segue into this actually, and so we'll cover this stuff in a sec. So there's a couple people that I follow to get the actual technicalities. So I generally try to take that information and condense it down into everything else that I know, and then give it to people in kind of a package that makes sense. Okay, so the first kind of thing that I'll show you is unrealized losses. Now, I did a presentation a number of times that used this as one of the big indicators of where we are and why it's a problem. So just in the frame here, you can see that back in the GFC, which is the furthest far left over here. I'll zoom into this. So that was basically $100 billion in losses for the GFC for the banks. Right now, we're sitting at somewhere in the neighborhood of $550 billion in losses for the banks. Well, they have to pull that money from somewhere, and generally, what that means is that they have to sell assets. So when interest rates go up, their bond prices go down, and if they have to sell those assets, which is the bonds, at a loss, that's where those unrealized losses come from, and that's what collapsed SVB last year. So SVB had a liquidity problem. They had to be like, hey, I got to get money right now. So plan A was get some investment into the bank. That didn't work because everybody's like, you need investment, sell everything and get it out of there. So everybody started essentially a run on that bank, and they were like, okay, we gotta sell assets, and they sold all of those assets at a loss because the interest rates had gone up and they didn't properly risk manage that asset class essentially. And so the bank collapsed, and Biden backed all of them up, and so that Silicon Valley wouldn't die because that's his base. And so the yield curve on bonds is what kind of denominate what the value of those bonds are. So to really just keep this really simple, when the interest rates go up, the value of those bonds go down, right? Just to keep that to make it simple. And the inversion of the yield curve basically means, in layman terms, that the longer the bond is, the more you should get out of it because you're taking on more risk over more time. That's what a normal yield curves looks like. So long term for the bond means higher rate because you're taking on more risk short term, right? So then inverted yield curve means that the short term yield curve, the short term yield was higher than the long term yield curve, right? That's what an inverted yield curve means. And so what's just happened recently, this week actually, is that the yield curve reversed again. So it's a normal yield curve. So the long term is now worth more than the short term. Okay. Now, why that's important is why I'm showing you this here. So what this basically means, these red lines are all of the recessions. And so every time that the yield, so this line right here is that yield curve inversion. So if it's below that line, that means it's inverted. If it's above that line, it means it's normal. And so what's happened almost every time with all of the recessions is that once the yield curve goes back to normal, there's a recession right after that, is basically what this is showing you. And so this is historical data that we're looking at, basically. And so this is 2020. This is the short one. This is the GFC here, right? And that those yields are one of those indicators that professionals look at to determine what's coming down the pipeline. Okay. Now that's instance or evidence number one that the recession and the collapse or whatever you want to call it is coming down the pipeline pretty quickly. Now, the second one is kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Okay. Do you have any questions on that first before I move on?
It's kind of, I mean, I'm not the ones that has any kind of a language for this, but it's consistent with what I've been seeing and hearing from the headlines and what I can glean out of it. You're kind of confirming what I've been seeing, and you're right. There's no good news coming in this, and this is why we've been trying so hard to get people to take it seriously, to get prepared, because you're going to run out of runway as far as for warning time. And that's what I see here is this is like a financial hurricane, and this is as short as warning as you're going to get.
Yeah, and can you bring up the comment from Deanna Cam at 408 or whatever the time it is for you? 08. Yeah, that one. So can you speak on the stock market wiping out $1 trillion on July 24th of July? Yeah, so this is basically 2 days ago, and this is one of the reasons that for that drop is I think people were selling assets to negate some of their losses, because essentially what happened, and this is what I'm trying to find right now. Is it this one? No, yeah, this one. So this dip right here, this is the S&P Industrial. No, that's not the right one. I should have pulled this up first because I should have brought this up. Okay, well, I can't show. I don't want to waste time finding the graph, but essentially the answer to this question is really simple. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 are essentially being pushed up, and they're on life support with the Magnificent Seven. So the Magnificent Seven is Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, Nvidia. I can't remember the other two, but it doesn't matter. There's 7 companies that make up about 30% of the Nasdaq, right? So when those companies go down a little bit, everybody feels it, and the decline in the stock market is a kind of a harbinger to what's coming. And so in one of the other graphs that I got here, I didn't pull it up.
I just wanted to tell everybody that's listening here, in the chat, I've dropped the link to Bryce's mural board, so you can go and see these notes and check them out at your convenience. It's free. There's no cost, so you can see it, week by week as he develops these mural boards for relevant points and tips that can develop a timeline for you of explanations so people can see, we're not just out here to try and create fear. This is a progression. We've been trying to warn folks and give them enough information to at least make the best informed decision possible in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and kind of, so I've been predicting this for a few years now, because since the 2007 GFC, when that happened, the way that we fixed that problem was we bail out the economy. Basically, the U.S. government threw out trillions of dollars. Obama era, like, get all the trillions of dollars into the market, and they saved the banks basically, right? But that problem that caused that stuff was never fixed. It actually got a lot worse. So from that moment, I know that, like, well, this is going to happen again at some point, right? And
Yep.
another reason that I really got into gold and silver, like, finally an opportunity to fix all this shit. And what the data is telling us, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this one, but what the data is telling us is that this next recession is going to be a depression, because of all of the different things that I've been talking about throughout our kind of chit chats back and forth in the last couple months. Is that all of the problems that we face now today are orders of magnitude worse than what we faced in 2007. At 2007, we weren't at war, more or less. Like, the U.S. is always at war, but we'll put that aside for a sec. We weren't at war. We didn't have massive problems in the economy other than the financial system itself, and things were trucking along basically, right? And what caused that is the banking system itself broke itself. There's like, hey, we could just make more money off other people. Like, people got to understand, right? This is kind of important. There's no such, well, I can't even say that because this is how the economy actually works. All of our money is lent into existence because we're disconnected from the price of gold. We're disconnected from the actual economy. It's all financialized, right? Everything is finance, basically. So it's all debt, and all debt has a interest rate on it. And when you take that interest out of the economy, it pulls money away from the actual economy, right? And so at a certain point, everything breaks because we, the people, don't have enough money in our pockets to continue the wheels and the gears of the economy to keep it flowing forward, because the
somebody else is making all of the interest and all of the profit off of the money that our governments are printing without backing. It has no actual value, but they're printing it and saying we're going to call it this much value, and will you agree to buy it and make the interest on it? Will you take the risk on our fake money? Yeah,
exactly. And I was thinking, so when I was doing this research, I was like, some of the stuff that came out was basically there's what's known as a delta, which is essentially the arbitrage from what it costs you to borrow and what you're loaning it out at. So banks typically borrow short term and lend long term, right? So they make more money on long term loan to a business because it's over time. And their short term money just gets refinanced and they trade it back and forth, and basically they're making a profit on that money itself. So like, I have the asset, I'm giving it to you for a rental, you're using it in the economy, I make money on that, to simplify it, right? But so think of that in a logical sense. If I have this as a business, the only way my business works is if I make a positive cash flow on my interest rates, right? So if I have a whole bunch of these bonds that are invested that are now worth less because interest rates go up, now instead of making money hand over fist, I'm losing money hand over fist. So it's a stupid system at a very baseline level to have the only thing that the bank does, which is supposed to lend money. If it doesn't do that profitably, it collapses. Well, what if it ever collapses? What if there's ever a situation where the bank lose money? We all lose. It's kind of a stupid system that we live in, right? So putting that aside, yeah, go ahead.
And then when they get to the point where all of a sudden they hit a negative, 0.1% loss, they dump it all and then buy it back. They dump it all before they've given up all of their profit margin that they made while they were making all of the interest, and then they'll turn around, and when it hits rock bottom and it's worth 10 cents on the dollar what it was when they dumped it, they'll turn around and buy it back.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's an old saying that goes right along with that, that goes, buy when there's blood in the streets, because that's when it's cheap, and that blood is coming around the corner. And so to kind of put a bow on what I was saying there is that the banks have come to a position where their way of making money is not as profitable. So they now, because interest rates have gone up, a lot of their assets that were denominated in 1 or 2%, because that's what interest rates were at historic lows. Now that the interest rates have gone up, everything denominated in that previous interest rate is now worth a lot less. So this is where these unrealized losses come from, right? Now, if they're going to try and fix this, there's a couple things that they can do, and one of them is selling assets, right? So that's what a lot of people do when they're running out of money. I've got a house, I've got a car, I've got a thing, I've got a this, I've got a that. I got to sell it to get the cash so I can pay my bills that I need to survive on a daily basis. And so this is one of the things that's happening right now, and this kind of is a segue into the next thing, which is what's happening right now. Unemployment is spiking. Delinquencies, which is mortgages or credit cards or stuff like that, it's all spiking right now. High interest rates, which is it takes more of our disposable income to pay for our main assets that we need to survive every day. Inflation has skyrocketed, which declines our purchasing power, which makes it more difficult to buy the same things that we were buying before, right? CEOs are selling off all of their stocks. It's an all-time high in the stock market right now. Retail spending, and this is the key, retail spending is falling, and nobody is buying new vehicles and used vehicles. The price of used vehicles are going down because that's a luxury item. So you're going to see luxury items plummet in value and price, and people are going to be selling that at discount. And so another thing that's happening kind of in general, especially in the US, now this isn't only because of this, because there's other reasons behind this, but we'll put that aside for a second. But the restaurants all across the US are failing. McDonald's might go out of business because their stupid garbage that they're doing for so long is people are finally fed up with paying this ridiculous amount of money for this garbage food. But the ultimate point here in all of these things is demand is going down. And if you have a system like we do based on supply and demand, and a lot of this is supply side control, but now you don't have enough people that have enough money to buy the things that keep everything moving, right? And that's what a recession is. And so this is kind of the most important thing. Rate drops after a pause, which is the pause in interest rates. So we're looking at interest rates here. Mm-hmm. Rate drops after a pause have shown recession in the last 3 recessions in a row. Okay, so the Fed, this is the Fed rate in the U.S., and so they stopped at 6.5% here at the dot-com bomb. We had a massive recession. They stopped at basically 5.25%. Massive recession in 2008. So they pumped it way up. Everybody is losing money. And this time from 2004 to 2007, like I remember 2005, that like we had a recession. I lost my job in 2005, 2006, 2007. Yeah, it was 2007 because I was in construction at the time. But the people that I knew, they were already starting to lose their jobs as well. And so that's what we're seeing now. And this is kind of the run up here as well. They just dropped interest rates to absolute nothing and then skyrocketed them. Like, how did anybody think that this wasn't going to cause a recession? And the reason that they had to do this is because they printed so much money in Canada, $650 billion. Where did our money go? What did it do? If we were investing in Canada and people were getting this money, I'm sure it wouldn't be this bad. But they didn't do that. They just probably filled their own pockets with it.
That was when the Corona demolition team got the go. They got the nod. That was really what happened there. And based on that fraud, they printed endless billions of dollars and then jumped on the conflict in Ukraine as well. All of this is methodology just to, as PDS set it up here, to put the printing machine on absolute overtime. And yeah, every elected official can suddenly realize as sudden wealth at taxpayer assent. That's the demolition bonus, right?
So just to put a bow on this, and so this is kind of what I've been predicting for most of this year so far, is that sometime near the end of this year, things are gonna pop, and we're starting to see that now. The rate drops and this demand going down is the biggest indicator, because if you don't have demand, and I'll throw this in too, so the Chinese economy, right, the entire Chinese economy is collapsing at free fall speed like this. So this isn't the actual economy. This is just an interest rate, but it actually looks like this. This is what's happening to their economy right now. There's no demand. Everybody's saving because they don't have any money. Nobody's exporting. They don't have orders. Like, nobody's investing, right? So that's what a recession is, and they're in literal collapse right now. I don't want to dive too deep into it. If anybody wants, you can go to YouTube and go to the China Observer or China Insights. Really good data on and videos on what's happening in China there, and that should show you in very visceral detail what's happening. And what I'm gonna predict here today is that sometime in the next 6 months, probably at the outside most, but probably sooner than that, we're going to start seeing Canadian real estate start to collapse, because the commercial real estate that has already been underwater and negative for years, because they have to refinance. And this is kind of what you're saying, so maybe that's a good lead into what you wanted to talk about.
Yep.
Which is the refinancing. So the delinquencies and the bankruptcies and the foreclosures that are happening in residential properties, that's happening because people are having to refinance at a much higher rate than they were used to. Because
I'll bring up a chart for that, and you can
Sure.
you can explain that in just a minute. But I didn't want to get too far behind on some of these comments because they're absolutely relevant. And like PDS said here, so in construction, he saw it in 2007, 2008, and right now there's a lot of them unemployed. Huge. Absolutely. In the entire industry is slow 100%, and that kind of brings up why it's this chart is kind of indicators for lots of for sale signs are being put up, and that's where Bryce, I'm going to unleash Bryce on this chart that I found today, and I wanted him to describe what he sees there, because it's right along the lines of what he's been saying. And I'm going to put this chart in the Substack for everybody tomorrow, so you guys can help explain to people why it's time to get ready.
Yeah. So a couple things in there. So somebody else mentioned their construction. So the morons in Ottawa that think that, we're going to build 3.5 million homes are just, Sean Fraser's just such an idiot, man. And the very fact that they're like, hey, we need more housing built because we're importing like 1 million people a year. Put that aside for a second. But the exact same time, the new home starts are going down. So that means a couple of things. So one, people are out of money. 2, people can't afford to buy these new houses that are going to cost an extreme amount of money because of inflation. 3, that they're either going to be rentals or vacant. And 4, if you don't have the prerequisite amount of jobs for people to have the money to fill those homes, they don't get filled. So unemployment is going up, right? That's kind of what a lot of that means. And so what this chart is showing us is that the amount of delinquencies and foreclosures that we've already seen, which have already spiked, is just the start. Okay, so most mortgages are on a 5-year term, so that can be fixed rate or variable rate. Now, there's always a big argument: fixed rate or variable rate, not really salient to this discussion, because the fact is that you have to renew at the end of those 5 years. And if you're used to, the chart that I just showed you, a lot of people renewed in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, right? And so if you're at the beginning of that, right, especially when 2020, when rates were at bottom bargain, you're almost at the point where you have to renew in the next 6 months to 2 years.
Right.
And that's what this chart is showing you. So I'll just use TD as the example. So TD mortgages renewal between in the next 6 months. So that's 6.7% of all mortgages at the bank have to be renewed. So nearly 10%, right?
That's huge.
Exactly, it is. And this is why I was saying that commercial real estate is the real time bomb, because all of that has to be renewed essentially in the next 2 years. So this year and next year is just an unbelievable amount of money. And the commercial real estate has 2 options. You either renew and suck down the losses, or you throw the keys back to the bank, and that asset goes back back to the bank, and then it's a toxic asset on the bank.
How many of these people that are looking in the next 6 months, and on this chart here, it's 6.7 TD, 8.1 at Scotia, 8.2 at Desjardins, it's 9.5 at CIBC, 5.2 at BMO. How many of these people are now underwater on their homes since they remortgaged them last 5 years before that?
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're underwater per se.
Well, given the economy, where our dollar is worth half as much as it was a year ago, never mind 5 years ago, there can't be many people that are in a comfortable situation with the mortgage that they're in, and given the buying power of what they're going to get for it now, I can't wish anybody being in that position right now, I don't think.
No, and a lot of people are going to be in that position because our leaders are so unbelievably incompetent with the government and the finances of it. And so I think the core response to that is that people invest in property and real estate for it to go up and be secure. So real estate is supposed to be one of the most secure assets you can have, right? Because it's a physical asset. And I agree to that to some degree. But there's a problem if that asset is overvalued, right? And so the Chinese economy, and why I follow it so closely, is because it's a harbinger of what's going to happen here. The Chinese economy, okay, and the Chinese real estate, the Chinese put 70% of all of their wealth into real estate, the Chinese people, okay? And that's generations of wealth. Some of these people saved literally for an entire generation. So like 30 years of savings to buy one of these ridiculously small, absolute garbage pieces of shit condos that a lot of people live in China, because that's where the jobs were in the cities, right? So the urbanization that happened over the last like 30 odd years, that's why they were doing that, because real estate was just going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. Same thing that's happened in Canada, right? And at some point it's going to go down, and it's going to go down far. And so what's going to happen at that time is, let's just say that everybody had a $250,000 condo that they built, or that they bought. You took out, a $200,000 loan, let's say, and you had $50,000 of equity because you put $50,000 down, right? Just to make this math really easy. And so over the next 10 years, because you bought it 10 years ago, it went up to $500,000, let's say. And then you refinanced the house because you needed some of the money out of that equity, and now you're paying $350,000 or something like that, okay? So let's say that the economy crashes and you lose your job, and you're like, well, I gotta sell my house. But because everybody else is selling at the same time, the value of that asset on the market drops by 50%. And so now you owe more on the house than it's actually worth to the market. That's what underwater means. And I think a lot of people are facing that situation, especially if they were an investor in property in the last couple of years. That, hey, I'm going to do an Airbnb or something like that because of cash flows, right? But if you can't cash flow it and you don't have the money, well, you got to sell. And there's a huge amount of downward pressure now that's coming out because of all of these problems that are getting considerably and orders of magnitude worse by the day. And so, like I said, I don't have a lot of good news for you today, but the reason that I'm telling you this in this way is because this is essentially baked in now. There's really nothing short of firing Justin Trudeau tomorrow and getting somebody competent that isn't an absolute moron in there to start fixing the economy. But even with that, even if we could do that tomorrow, we still have the systemic problems of the system itself that are now baked in because this has been literally years in the making. And so all of the bullshit printing that we did for the last 4 years of $650 billion by our government, well, somebody's going to have to pay for that, and it's going to be us.
Yeah, it was by design to make sure that they weakened the dollar enough that nobody would be able to buy. And since they're a couple of comments below here are some good stuff there, but we're seeing holdings companies buying up massive numbers of properties. And I think that's just Ponzi scheme, shell gaming, the assets and the values and the money of that, kind of like extortion, break them, and then get their get the property for even if it it's the prices are inflated. They're buying them from people that they're just coming out of it dirty cheap on the properties that they're breaking people over is kind of, I guess, the only way I can explain it or understand it, I guess. But they absolutely know what they are doing. I do believe so. I'm not sure where you're at. Python 3-bedroom duplex going for a duplex. You don't even get the whole house. You only get half for $1 million, basically.
Yeah, and when I was building homes 10, 15 years ago, whatever that is now, it was half the price for double the home, right? And so in that time, we've seen our costs to the end consumer, i.e., you and me, double in cost. Like have we gotten double the amount of money in our jobs? No. So where did all this money go? What happened to it? And what happened to it is that we have communists around the show, and this has been intentional. Is basically the simplest way as I can explain it.
And so constructions, the projects that are going on is bank money, printed money, based on agreements and orders from corrupt governments. And
can I comment on that really quick? So, so generally, the way that construction is started and done and development is done in Canada is quite straightforward, right? So generally, what happens is somebody has to go and buy the property, buy the land, right? And if that's empty land, it's a different process. You have to put up essentially most of the money yourself, and the banks won't really lend against open empty land. But if it's in the city somewhere, there's generally already somebody there, so you can put a loan against it. And so when you get a development loan, or you're trying to do the actual development, generally you have to get a loan that's usually about a 70-30 split. So you put up 30%, the bank puts up 70. Now that number is going down because banks are tightening their lending. And so what that actually means is that if you're going to develop something, and especially if it's really an overvalued asset, you have to put up more money up front to make sure that the bank will give you the amount of money that you need to develop whatever that asset is. And so because we have a huge amount of units coming online because we've been building like crazy, especially here in Vancouver for the last few years, because wow, we have so many people coming. We need places to put them. Never mind the fact that we could just not be bringing all these other people in. That would solve the problem by itself, but we'll put that aside for a second. And so what you have is that a huge number of new assets are coming online to the market at the same time as people are like, I got to sell my place. And so what you're going to see is that a massive amount of downward pressure on prices, and it's already started.
So this is why we see started projects go on to hard stop pause for the last little while in a lot of places.
That's what happened to me in 2007. Is I was in construction right out of high school. Basically, I got out of high school in 2005, and I was just got into construction. So for 2 years, I was doing whatever I was doing, and then everything was like boom, halted, and like I basically restarted in a new profession for years after that. I kind of lost that time of my life because everybody was so poor, nothing was happening. And so the same thing that happened then is now going to happen again, but on a much larger scale. Because
yeah, it's going to happen now on steroids.
yeah, and here's the extra problem that nobody's really considering right now. So COVID did a couple things to our economy, right? And I've explained this a couple times, but whoever hasn't seen this, seen it before, I'll just re-explain it really quickly. So COVID allowed us to understand a very simple concept. There's two types of jobs. There's a job that I have to physically be there to do, and everything else. And if there's a job that I don't have to physically be there, I'm not just competing against people in my town or my community or my city or whatever, or my province or country. I'm now competing against the whole planet, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what that did is has a downward pressure in pay, because if I can get somebody in India to do the tech that I'm going to do, well, why would I pay your white ass? Because I can get somebody in India to do it, right?
As soon as they force the companies to employ digitally, they destroyed their own companies or their own employees, because that's exactly what happened. They went to Fiverr and they got somebody that wasn't expecting or didn't need $25 an hour to survive.
Yeah, and so it's really breaking down the barriers of what a country is in that respect, because of what a job is and what it means to do something for the economy. Where does that money go? Who gets it? How does it get there? Right? Very different from 10, 15 years ago, because that wasn't a thing, right? And so now that we have that, there's now the added additional another level of the economy, which is robotics and AI, right? So if there's a job that you have to physically be there to do, well, what if we get a robot to do it? And if you don't have to be there, if we can get an AI to do it for us, well, what do we need you for? And so what we're walking into, I shouldn't even say what we're being thrown into is a state of the world where we have a massive financial collapse that's been orchestrated for us by the Great Reset and all the retards doing that. We have a world war that we're also being orchestrated for us by both the East and the West, so the Eastern authoritarians and the Western oligarchs. And then we have AI that is replacing all of the jobs that would normally be for people with AI. And so whoever controls those AIs or robots is making money hand over fist, and everybody else gets screwed. And so what this will lead to, and this is kind of the most important part, is whoever gets to survive this, you have an option to be either on UBI, which is, AKA communism. Who's going to pay for that? Who knows? But it would be central bank digital currency communism, or you're living off on the land somewhere, and you're in a community that you have people that are protected, and you protect each other and work to survive, kind of like the Amish with some sort of level of technology. And so the only way that you can avoid those two extremes is if we kick all the retards that are pushing this on us out. That's it. I don't know what else to tell you.
Lots more to discuss on some of that. I'm going to get through some of the comments here, but this one here has got me thinking, Eskadog, there's absolutely going to be a massive spike in bankruptcies, and this has got me
already happening.
It is, and this has got me thinking. We talk in context of 2008 versus now. There's others that have looked at the numbers and put into scale and perspective, that are saying what's coming this time around is going to make the dirty 30s look like Sunday school, not just 2008 on steroids, but the dirty 30s, a walk in the park. That's I guess a scale of magnitude to how dependent we are on the debt that's going to collapse us, and that's the evil that they've implemented through all of this. So
yeah, and that's the intentional part of this, is that they can't roll out central bank digital currencies if you are happy, don't have to worry about them, you got a job, you're making money, like you don't need their bullshit if you have what we already have. They have to break the new system to roll out the new one, right? And the only way to break the new system is to increase the debt, make everybody a moron. So there's a great quote that I've been posting that was basically like, DEI is a disguise for sabotage, essentially. No, so DEI is being used to disguise sabotage as incompetence. That's what it is.
I've been adapting my terminology as we go here, and we don't have a prime minister, we don't even have a management team, we have a demolition team in government, and we're not alone. I've been really kind of stretched here this week myself with doing a lot of communications with Europe this week, a lot of conversations, several shows, and some really amazing Twitter spaces in the last few days as well, or this week. And it's interesting how people are starting to realize, this demolition squad similarities and parallels between all of our nations, and understanding where we're at with exactly that, putting it to scale. I reference often that Canada is 10% of what's going to take in America. We have 10% of the population, so that kind of gives them a benchmark of a timeline or warning. And but in talking with people in Ireland this week, it's crazy. Those guys have about 10% of our population. So if we think it's happening fast here, if Americans think it's happening fast there, they got nothing on how fast it's happening in Canada, and we got nothing on how fast it's happening in Ireland right now by the minute as we speak.
Yeah, they're building like barracks for the foreigners they're being imported into Ireland. Like, I don't know how anybody can defend this stuff, but it's can you bring up my screen for a sec, because I think this perfectly encapsulates what's happening right now.
If I can I just want to get through some of these comments here, because otherwise we're going to have a whole bunch that we're going to
yeah.
not going to make any sense when we get to them down at the end. So
sure.
During COVID, Trudeau added more money to the debt to give out to people during the COVID times, which was 1%, because he did that. He inflated the interest rates. That was part and parcel of the demolition. They knew what was going to happen by printing all of this money, and then retrieving it later is all part of the scam. I believe personally.
It is.
In Southern California, lucky you, Mira. Well, maybe. I know you got Gavin Newsom, and he ain't. Him and Trudeau are cookie cutter clones.
California is literally collapsing to the communist insanity that they're happening. And I remember thinking years ago, because I was looking at the demographics and the economic standpoint of the U.S., and this is pre-2007, because I've always been interested in this stuff. I'm like, man, California is 10% of the American economy. If California ever collapses, the U.S. is screwed, and that's what's happening right now.
Well, I hope that this was a good advice, Canterbury. I hope it was good advice. That's all I can say. I don't remember when it was you were listening to me, but thank you for sharing with that. That might be good advice or bad advice, but I let the world know that you made the decision based on what you heard here. So I guess we'll go with that. So not too many fires in California. We're going to talk for a minute or two in just a minute about some of the fires going on here in Canada and why it's happening. Here it's going to take 10 years to rebuild some of that going on. Liberal fire starters. I don't know if I want to get into the conspiracy of things, but there's more than enough of the obvious yet at this point. And I've got some rage built up for that. In that case, crazy. The lunatics have been called to action. That's really what it is. Oh, there you go, Bryce. I mean, like this guy. You're a smart cookie. Right?
Thanks, bro. Not many people pump me up. I'll let you know.
No, not when you're a purveyor of things people don't want to hear. Pumping up is not something you're going to get a lot of. So welcome.
Which I'm fine with. Like I argue with people on Twitter all day. Like most people, like, oh, don't deal with the trolls. Like, screw that, bro. You say some stupid shit to me, I'm all up in it, bro.
I've been railing on some people on Twitter the last little while, but foreclosure is huge business, has been for years. The real estate bankers, lawyers, and court clerks all walk hand in hand up here. And I had a whistleblower who's had his life ruined over exposing all of that. A couple of them I've had on, the one in Windsor and one in Alberta. We've got another series show roundtable, I guess, coming up on something like on that again real soon. But you're 100% right. It's been a big club, and we weren't in it, and I'm sorry that you had to pay the price for that. No. Yeah, definitely. Okay, here's one about the developers, PDS 10, where the developers have to cough up more money. They just won't develop. Exactly. They'll just send a construction crew home and say, wait for a call.
Yeah.
That's what happens. And then the guys sit there until they got nothing left. They got no diaper stuff for the kids. They can't pay the bills. And they call up the boss, and the boss says, well, we're on hold. That's it.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I mean is that the mechanism of our economy is under attack, right? So the mechanism of us living in society is under attack. And so this is why I kind of talk pretty harshly about this stuff, is because I've seen this stuff for years, right? But this is a war against the West. The West specifically, because we're the head, the tip of the spear, if you will, for humanity, right? We have the most technology. We're like the furthest progressed, whatever you want to call it. But we are what the world looks to be like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? So we can be like you guys, right? And that's why people come here, because they're like, yo, my third world country is full of corruption and morons that are like just destroying everything, right? I don't know why we're importing them all here, but put that aside for a second, right? And so the attack on the West is to hobble everybody. If they can take out the US, they can take out everybody, because the US is the only country on the planet where everybody can have a firearm by law. And that's the only reason that we don't have total tyranny already, because they already have it everywhere else.
America is in essence the Alamo against the New World Order, and this is why they're going out and picking off the smaller, weaker countries: Ireland, the Netherlands, New Zealand. These kinds of countries are the ones that get clobbered first, and then it's coming up. We're kind of middle of the pack. They're going to be a little bit more. They're more incentivized to conquer Canada simply because of the wealth that is here, and the lower number of obstacles to get through, i.e. carbon-based life forms. But Canterbury, I think that's the best advice that anybody can be listening to right now. If you're not in huge debt, get out of it and get to stockpiling and thinking about things that others might not think of, that you might have an abundance of. All of those things are going to be currency in a very short period of time.
And that's why I try to talk about it every single time. Is your food and the security of your family is the number one. But before you even consider gold and silver, make sure that your family's good. And I say that as somebody that makes money off of selling gold and silver to people to protect their wealth. Go and get whatever you need to survive first, because nothing else matters than your survival.
Mira, I think that's also very, very sound advice. You're lucky to have a pension, but that given a collapse is not going to help you a whole lot. Talk to a financial advisor, absolutely. But I think that this is, at this point right now, if they're not telling you to get into something tangible that the government cannot reach or take away from you, you cannot bury in the backyard, they're probably only talking to you to get a commission from you out of you.
Yeah. So whoever that was, I can't remember the name. So if you look up Mira, so if you look up Peter Merrick, he's down in the U.S. He used to be a Canadian citizen up here, and he moved down to the U.S. He knows a lot about real estate and stuff, but he has a network of awake people. He's an awake guy. So if you're looking for somebody that will give you actual advice that isn't the government talking points, Peter Merrick, Merrick. Good guy.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, the second part of your comment is definitely not a good idea for it to be sitting in the county. I don't know what it's like in America, but here in Canada, this is the most dangerous place that it can be, is in your bank account here in Canada.
Yeah, and you're only insured up to 250 grand in any given account. So and that's assuming that the insurance even works when things go sideways and go off the cliff. So my recommendation to you is wherever you are and whatever you're doing, make sure you have hard assets in where you are and that you can survive wherever you are, because it doesn't really matter where you are. So there's people from all over the place in this chat, right? It doesn't really matter where you are. You are in a physical location that you cannot leave to some degree, right? No matter where you go on this planet, you're still in a physical location somewhere with people around you. You and whoever is with you in that community are part of that community, and which communities survive this will be determined by how well those communities work together and what they can produce for themselves, and that they can trade or work with other communities collaboratively. And right, so the idea of Canada was supposed to be, we're all part of this big family, right? We all collaborate, we're all on the same team, right? And now,
go communism.
Yeah, literally. So stupid, bro. I absolutely despise communists, man. They're so dumb. I argued with two of them today.
We don't want to realize how far communism has entrenched itself in Canada, but yet all you have to do is change the wording of what they call equalization payment into hardcore communism, and that's how long we've been straight up communist in Canada. Absolutely. We got to get hurrying up on some of these comments. Great point from PDS10. They cannot collapse the system all at once, because then everybody will uprise. We saw that, a fictional scenario of that when we did the watch party on Years a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, I guess now. But yeah, when it starts and people start to wake up, this is where you start to see the banking runs. So they've been quietly demolishing our economies, lying to us about the economy and the immigration, and that has facilitated this. They're robbing the Titanic on the way down, right?
Yeah, it's a good analogy for that, actually. Let's steal that.
Say what else we got here. Sorry. Find what your payout is and look at the difference. What are you going to lose? That's again, financial advisor down there, Peter Merrick. Something retains its value. Best taking the money out. Yeah, that's more than we can. We cannot give actual direct financial advice, but I'm sure if you reach out to Bryce on a personal level, he can help you find somebody that possibly could closer to you.
Yeah. If you click the link, we know a bunch of people in the financial industry in various different ways. So if you have a question, happy to help you in any way that you can. Like, my goal for being on this is to help as many people as possible prepare for this, because I remember 2007. I have a lot of historical knowledge about how bad things can get when societies break down and fall apart. And this is what I see happening. And so for every single person that takes my words to heart and prepares themselves for it, I call it a win.
Yeah, I prefer not to fund the Trudeau regime, and funding the Trudeau regime funds the Biden regime. So we showed a little bit of that last night. All right, get through, see if I find some more that are pertinent to. I'm glad to see everybody chatting there, and lots of comments. Excellent stuff, guys. Wow, so many comments today. We don't usually have this problem of going through so many comments. So this is kind of new for me. All right. What do we got here? Company just stopped building a battery plant in Kingston. Yeah, the EV trucks is dead. Ford's not having any more of it. Trudeau paid Volkswagen for battery plant in St. Thomas. Yep, 100%. Good. Yes, I heard a little bit about this. This is in the U.S. again. Took away the government's ability to restrict firearm ownership and no limit on the amount of ammo that you can have. Not all precious metals are gold and silver. Some are also brass, copper, and lead. Right. Yep. So, what else we got here? Yeah, exactly. Copper, lead. Yeah, in Canada, it's
you're only insured up to $100,000 in Canada. Just FYI.
Yeah. Good, you're stocked up. Hey, Heather. Media neighbors are public safety. That's a good thing. I think we're getting close down to the end of the deck here. Yeah, while rearranging the deck chairs as the band plays on. Absolutely. Who made the money everyone lost in 2007? That's a good question for you, Bryce.
The oligarchy.
Yep.
Do you want me to bring up a meme for it? I can show you. Not that one, but give me 1 sec. I'll bring it up so you can look at that for a second. It's this one. All right. Oh, it's this one. Sorry. This one. Here it is.
This one here, what's going to happen with the government funding low income? That's going to be the bait, the carrot for universal basic income. When they crash the economy and there's nothing left, nobody has anything, and they will offer you, you can have access to essential needs if you just sign on the dotted line and take this digital ID chip. So it looks like.
So when I say the oligarchy, this is what I refer to. Right, so you have all of us plebs at the bottom here. You have all of the systems of control, the media, the schools, all these whatever corporations that fund them and essentially siphon off some of the money. But this level right here is the actual systemic control. So central banks, interest, taxes that come off of us, the World Bank, Bank of International Settlements. So this entity, if anybody wants to research the kind of the nodes of control in society, the Bank of International Settlements is one of the highest orders of authority on the planet. And what it essentially is the central bank of central banks. So the central banks are all owned by the Rothschilds. They're owned. They're privately owned, essentially, is what the central bank is. And the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, is the intermediary between all of them, and they push out policy to everybody. So they're one of the highest levels of authority on the planet. And then you have the think tanks, the Committee of 300, and this is all. This group essentially here is the oligarchy, these families that run the world.
So last night we looked at the 9th richest family in the world, who just so happened to be Canadian and just so happened to own almost 100% of the mediaverse out there. What Robert Murdoch doesn't own, the Thompson family does under David Thompson. So while he's sitting in his luxury box watching his Winnipeg Jets and at the Bread and Circus Arena, the 9th richest family in the world, where does that fit onto this scale, Bryce?
Yeah, they're in there. they're in here somewhere. If they're that rich, I kind of doubt that they could be that rich, because that's way up.
Dude. dude, I just skimmed over the surface of it last night, and it would blow your freaking mind. BlackRock is paying them $10 billion a year to provide news for them and Reuters. They own Reuters. They own the European Writers Association.
Okay. So they're a media mogul.
Yes. Oh, okay. They bought everything that Robert Maxwell lost when they found him floating outside the Lady Ghislaine, being the Mossad, CIA media moguls. David Thompson is now in control of that legacy and media dynasty, so they have got to be right near the top. There's no way that you set the narrative on the world's news while you're sitting in your box in Winnipeg without having that kind of stroke. So he's got to be in the top 3-4 people there. Again,
well, you got to remember that like one of these families is the Rothschilds, which essentially owns all the central banks, right? And so the amount of money that they have compared to everybody else is almost on another level. And so the reason, think about this. This is actually a test that you can use when talking to somebody. Be like, oh, hey, who do you think the richest person on the planet is? And if anybody says Elon Musk, they don't know anything. They have no idea. Right, the Saudi Aramco is a multi-trillion-dollar business that is owned by the Saudi family. Like, it's ridiculous.
This dude competes directly with JP Morgan.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that type of level. So when I say the oligarchy means a state of control, or a system of control.
He does have a title, and he does have a title issued by the Queen.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And so an oligarchy means a system of government by wealthy and powerful families is essentially what that means. And humanity has always been in essentially this type of control mechanism for all of human history. Like, so you can look back at all of the different collapses that have happened throughout history. Every time an empire collapses, every time a country collapses, there's always somebody that owns the assets that either take them or reinvest them into whatever comes next. So somebody comes in and makes a deal and says, you get this, I get this, I keep the power, you get this power, on to the next thing, right? It's been forever. And so they're doing this playbook again. And so the thing that I wanted to show here quickly, is there any more comments, or can I go through this?
Well, do this and then we'll get to the comments and we'll close it off after some comments.
Sure. And so this is kind of one of my central tenets that I always come back to, is that we are a group of people in a community, right? We are supposed to select who leads us, and by consent, they rule. If they rule by force, they're not a leader, they're a tyrant, right? And so I always come back to this. These idiots are not representing us. They need to get the fuck out. And so this is kind of what it boils down to, is if we are going to fix this problem ever and not be, enslaved by the idiocy that's coming down the pipeline, these idiots that are in control of us need to be kicked out immediately. And so I think that we need an election this year. And I know a lot of people say that doesn't do anything. I disagree. You have to be loud, and you have to be like, politics is the game of you say something and I say something, and we see what happens in view of everybody else, and then we collectively agree which way we go. And if we don't have the ability to do that, we don't really have a democracy. And to some degree, I agree with that idea. But at the end of the day, you only have two choices. You're either going to accept defeat and run away and lose, or are you going to stand up and fight? And this is kind of why I post this a lot now, is that I want to give people an idea that there is hope. I will never surrender, and I will never give up. And so I identify as this guy, and we're pretty much here, right? So I want everybody to get this through their head, is if you do nothing, nothing will happen. And it's going to be real bad for all of us. So it's imperative that all of us, if you agree with anything that I said today and you don't want this bullshit to happen to you and your family and everybody else that you care about, well, you better get involved now. And this is kind of why, because this is what's coming. And I'll get to the communism in a sec. Why invade a country when you could just buy its institutions, turn its women against its men, make transvestites of its children, sell the wealth generated by its labor to foreign investors, then introduce a foreign army as refugees and diversity to finish it off? Well, that sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Right? And what they're ultimately going to do, and this is why communism is freaking stupid, is that essentially what they're going to say is, you over there need to give us stuff so we can give it to somebody else. Screw that. Communism is so stupid. It's never worked. And anybody that's pushing any of these moronic WEF, ESG, DEI, equity, woke ideas, they're all communist, even if they're too dumb to figure it out. And you and me have been silent for too long, and you need to get loud and say, that's bullshit. I'm not taking this anymore. Shut the hell up, and let's do something about it. Because if we don't, we lose. It's really that simple.
With our own self-censorship, because it wasn't affecting us, is ultimately what's left us, kind of in this position. And I hate to say it, but Canadians are terrible for, if it looks like somebody else is going to take care of the problem, I'll just go back to my own thing.
Well, that's why I'm pissed.
Yeah. So yeah, it's past the ability to do that anymore. So a few more comments here before we close it off. We're a little bit over. Carney's back, CBDC digital guru. Yeah, he's the cookie cutter globalist that the same as a Pierce Dharmer. Did I pop you out?
Yep.
I must have hit the wrong button. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, he's the cookie cutter clone trooper. Not no surprise. They're preparing for the selection, and the charade of it. Hey, Marianne, I saw this other comment here that won't be able to. Oh yeah, Facebook. Sorry, guys. Quite surprised that I'm able to stream to you guys on Facebook, but I want to take this opportunity to let you guys know, get off of Facebook, get on Rumble, or get on Substack. That's where all the good stuff happens. This is just, a rare excursion. So you're not going to get notifications from Facebook, but you should get them from Rumble. So I really wanted to make that point. Nova Scotia, another series in the banks that had issues today. People weren't getting their paychecks. I saw.
And if CrowdStrike isn't this stuff always happens after we get off. So like CrowdStrike last week, right? That is the biggest example of why you should never have everything digital. You have to have something physical. You have to have the ability to get resources physically, because if they just push a button and the internet goes down or power goes down, how long can you really survive without the system being there to facilitate your survival? You have to start thinking about this, because at some point, they've been telling this for us for years, there's going to be a cyber attack that just everything collapses. Well, they just test ran it basically the other week.
Yeah, I saw the advanced warning. If you thought that was bad, wait till the next solar flare. See what that has in stock. So this is just again more of them manifesting and continuing with the propaganda and the terrorism. To keep us off balanced and incapable of functioning at a unified level. But I got to say, Europe was very inspired by what happened here in Canada during our convoy. And since then, they've been very busy organizing and resisting over there. And I think Canadians should pay a little bit more attention to some of the stuff that they're doing over there, because those people know how to restore their freedom. And they're doing it. And we need to take some lessons from all of that. So,
sorry, but I'll just leave off on this. Is that what happened in France was the far left parties, the communists and all the other idiots on the far left, They basically came to an agreement that says, hey, we're only going to run one candidate in each riding to basically push off the Conservatives. And the NDP and the Liberals are talking about doing the same thing because they already have a coalition. They're basically one party now. Yep. So I'll say this again. I joined the Conservatives because I wanted to have a voice that I could say, like, hey, I'm a part of this and I got to hold you guys accountable too. But if you don't get invested in your community, you're going to lose it. So I'll leave it at that.
We had Nadine Ness on Wednesday, and she was, talking about how they've been able to successfully create voting blocks, and they're starting small there in Saskatchewan, and first taking back the school boards and then the cities, and the government is paying absolute attention because they see themselves on next for being replaced because these people have got it together. They're organized, they're practicing not just random acts of being outraged. They're actually organizing in tactical civic measures. So this is going to be doing a lot of talking about that over the next little while. Bryce Wade is a communist. I think that you're in the wrong chat, dude. Anyways, folks, that has been quite a drink from the fire hose again. And who knows what comes between now and next week. So thanks again, Bryce, for taking the time to chat with us, and stay sane. All right, guys. What an adventure. What a roller coaster ride. I really have no words at this point except for hold on. So I guess I kind of leave you with what I left the European group with there today. Once we realize that we don't have leaders or management, we have demolition teams. This is an opportunity for us to carve out the parallels and organize effectively and accordingly, and understanding and knowing that localism is the 100% safe and effective cure for globalism, fortifying our communities, fortifying ourselves, and living free without the stress and the fear is how we ultimately beat them. So thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in with us. Big week next week. Too much to even begin to think about. My head is still spinning after this week, but we will see some of you guys tomorrow. I'm hoping that we get I wanted to share this with you guys just one more time, because this is happening tomorrow, 11 o'clock Eastern. We are getting a little informal gets together on talking about exactly that. How do we put our money where our mouth is? And this is going to be something we're going to be doing a little bit more regularly. And there's a lot of people that talk a lot of big talk, but if you're not putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to fighting these entities, you're just really not that serious. You're probably, part of, it's not hurting you bad enough yet. So the people that want to look at different ways to hit back and defund some of these monsters permanently, this is the link to do that. Reach out to me, whatever the case might be. Get a hold of me before 11 o'clock tomorrow. Get your link. You can register. It's also, the link for this is also in yesterday's or this morning's Substack. But at the end of the day, I love you all. Stay mighty, stay strong, my fellow patriots and hostages, and we will see you on Monday at 6 p.m. Central again. All right, bye for now.
In times of global instability, soaring inflation and massive debt, gold and silver have proven to be unshakable pillars of wealth. New World Precious Metals, based in Calgary, Canada, is a leading international brokerage. We offer an easy, secure and cost-effective platform for investing in gold and silver, including our international wholesale program and registered retirement savings accounts. Protect your money outside traditional banking with our physical precious metals, privately vaulted outside the banking system at secure, insured exchanges worldwide. Gold and silver have been trusted assets for generations, with current projections indicating high returns. And with unprecedented demand from governments, banks, and investors, there are now shortages. Precious metals thrive during inflation, geopolitical instability, and currency devaluation. Sound familiar? Now is the time to invest in gold and silver, whether in your international investment account or by transferring registered retirement savings accounts. Experience the security of physical precious metals, combining the safety of physical assets with the flexibility of being like your own bank, offering instant liquidity and a financed line of credit. With precious metals on the rise, don't miss this generational opportunity to protect your wealth. At New World Precious Metals, we ensure your wealth meets its potential. Contact us today and our personal brokers will guide you every step of the way.